My name is Tina Lee. Welcome to Dice Rising. Today I'm going to be giving a talk about self-promotion for artists and activists, some basics, some unconventional tips, and then we'll have a chance to discuss if any of you have any questions. So as I said, my name is Tina Lee. My pronouns are she, her. I live in Berlin, Germany, where I work as a journalist, a researcher, and I work as a project manager for an organization called hostwriter.org, which is a cross-border journalism network. So in the field of journalism, I have the opportunity to engage with a lot of people who are trying to get their work out there, who are trying to make a name for themselves, and I get to see a lot of what works and what doesn't work. So today we're going to talk about just some basics and how you can level up from there. I would like to say I am a native English speaker. That means I talk sometimes super fast. So if there are people that are listening in that have questions, want me to slow down, or want me to dig deeper into a certain topic, like there's a term I use that doesn't make sense to you, please go ahead and write into the Q&A and I will see them and we can stop at any time to revisit something or to dig deeper. And I think I've left plenty of time in my presentation for that. So if there's questions or examples from your own life, I'd be very happy to dig into that with you individually. And you can just write into the Q&A and we can have a little chat. So for now, I'm going to start by putting my screen on so I can share with you my presentation. And I think I'll be peering out at you from a corner on the side. So hopefully that makes it possible also for me to see when there's questions. Okay, so as I said, my name is Tina Lee. I'm going to be talking about promotions, self-promotions 101. So let's just jump right in, shall we? What am I going to be covering today? First of all, I'm going to be talking about self-promotion as a mindset. In other words, what kind of approach would you like to take to promoting yourself, promoting your work? Secondly, we'll be talking about finding a goal, finding the audience that you want to reach, the goal that you'd like to unlock, for what reason you want to promote yourself. Then we'll be talking about how to make it easier for opportunities to find you, about the network gap, what that is and how we can bridge it. And then I'm going to close with a really small amount of digital security tips, and then we'll have time for some questions. So let's start with the most important thing, which is that most of us, not all of us, some of us are very natural self-promoters, but many of us feel uncomfortable promoting our work. First of all, feels intrusive. We all live in an environment where we're constantly bombarded with advertisements and with native ads inside of Facebook and Twitter and things like that that try to convince us to do certain things, to take certain trips. We feel intimidated and surveilled. All of you have been in that situation where you open up Facebook and it has an advertisement for something that you were just talking about, or you get recommended a new band on Spotify that someone had just emailed you about. So it can feel like you're shouting into a void, but also that you're doing something that people get annoyed by when you get involved in promoting yourself. That's the one thing. The second thing is that many people, especially those of us from marginalized backgrounds, POC, women, members of the LGBTQ community, we have been taught that talking about ourselves and our achievements, asking for what we're worth, being confident is actually being overbearing, it's being braggy, it's narcissistic or self-centered. Especially people who work in sort of the activist field also get this kind of idea that asking for money for your work, asking for support, asking for recognition is sort of taking away from solidarity or for the common cause. So I would like to tell you, let me give you the permission structure that you need right now by saying that craving self-expression, recognition, and adequate pay for the work that you do is not egotistical, it's not narcissistic, it's not self-centered. And just because there is a group of people in our society of cis white men who feel very comfortable asking for a raise, you're very comfortable talking about their achievements, that doesn't mean that it is negatively associated when you do the same thing. There will always be people who criticize you for standing up for yourself or for talking about what you've achieved. And those people are not your audience. Those are not the people we're trying to please, and they're also not the people we're trying to address. You're going to be too much for some people, and that's okay. You're not for everybody. Not everybody's for you either. The main question that you need to ask yourself when you get into self-promotion, if you find yourself doubting that you actually do want to engage in this kind of work, that you want to make your work visible, that you want people to see what you do, is, did I create something that I want others to see? It could be that you are in a hibernation phase, that you're creating something that's just for yourself, that you're practicing, that you want to keep your group small of who you share what you've created with. That's fine. Then self-promotion is not the game right now. But if you've created something that you love and that you want other people to see, then you have to engage in some self-promotion. So that's what we're talking about today, is the state of affairs where you have something that you want to share with the world. It could be a piece of art, it could be an album, it could be some activism work that you're engaged in, it could be a book, but it's something that's ready to go and you want to start showing people. So speaking to this kind of mindset problem, there's a lot of people that feel if they're really great, then people will find them. If you create something wonderful, that automatically you will be recognized for your work, and that you shouldn't have to go shouting about the stuff that you've done in order for people to find you. And I'm here to tell you that this is not the case, that even if you make something which is really miraculous and that everybody should know about, taking it for granted that people will find out about it and come to you is a mistake. So why do you need to promote your work?
Sure I understand.
Oh, sorry. That's me shouting into my phone. Speaking of surveillance capitalism. So why do you need to promote your work? There's a couple of reasons. Here's some of the main ones. First of all, in order to get opportunities. People are generally speaking very lazy, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing. And they're looking for the most obvious person to do a certain task. This happens in my case quite frequently. I do public speaking here and there, and I find that the more public speaking I do, the more I get invited for public speaking. Now, am I the best possible person to moderate a panel on a certain topic? No, but if someone just saw me at an event, saw me doing a public speaking gig, then they go, oh, well, I can ask her to do my public speaking gig too, and then that's taken care of. People have long lists of things they need to do, and if they can make it easy, that's good. So getting opportunities is one. Second of all, getting paid more. If you can point to work that you've already done, the value of your experience, and also point to the fact that you have an audience, you're able to ask for more money. Now, is that necessarily fair? No, but that's the way it works. People are willing to pay more for stuff that's tested and approved, and people are willing to pay more for stuff for which there's an audience. If there is a musician that has a huge following on Twitter, or Instagram, or Facebook, people are more willing to pay that person more because they think that person will sell more tickets. They don't have to do as much promotion. So this is a natural part of it, is trying to being able to ask for more money. A less capitalistic reason is to find collaborators. If people know what kind of work you're doing, then it's also possible for them to find you for work that they're doing that connects to yours. This is especially the case in terms of activism and stuff that has to do with research or things like that. If no one knows what you're doing, how can they also cite you? How can they credit you? How can they find you and tell you about an opportunity to go in on something together with them? So you want to look at promotion as also an opportunity for you to actively find collaborators. And having a collaborative mindset is a very helpful way to look at self-promotion as something that is also giving back, because you want other people to find you. And that comes back to my final thing, which is that you want to educate and inspire. You created something because you think it's good, you think it's important, and you want people to find it, right? If not, go back to step one and ask yourself, did you make something you want people to see? But if you did make something that you want people to see, then you don't know how many people out there really need what it is that you have to offer, and have been waiting exactly for your album, for your piece of art, for your activism movement to finally shed light on something that's important to them. So it would be very good for you to keep in mind that by promoting yourself, you also enable yourself to connect with people that need that special thing that you do have to offer. I have here a quote from Catherine Joller, who's an artist. She says, "In my professional opinion, self-promotion can be weird, but it also presents an interesting philosophical opportunity. How can you think about your art as a service to others instead of something you just have to do for yourself? The best marketing plan is the one that moves you towards your goals, doesn't make you crazy, and that you don't mind or even enjoy day after day." I see a question. I'm sorry, I don't know how to exit my presentation real quick to see it though. I'm just going to pause for a moment. Okay. Someone mentioned that it's sometimes not fair, but that's very true. Yeah. So yeah, it's true that the part that people find someone because they're being lazy or that they're the first person that pops in their head, it's not the fair way, but it is also the way it happens sometimes. We're going to get to that a little bit more in the topic of networking. So what I think is interesting about this quote, or what I want to bring up about this quote, is that it's important to you to conceive of self-promotion as something that is authentic to you, that you don't go and do forms of self-promotion that make you feel uncomfortable. So it's one thing to feel weird about promoting your work, but it's another thing to feel like, this isn't me. This is not who I am. I was just talking to Isabella before we started this presentation, who's one of the people working for DICE, about how much she loves hearing about the artistic process that people go through when they're creating a work of art. And maybe for you, that artistic process is really personal. It's something you wouldn't feel comfortable sharing. So maybe there's another thing that you would feel comfortable. But for other people, talking about the artistic process is maybe something that really excites them and makes them feel connected to their audience. So again, it's about what would be natural and authentic to you, how you can use this to connect with your audience, not doing something that makes you feel icky. So once we've established why we want to do self-promotion and the fact that it's going to be necessary for us to kind of get the opportunities that we deserve, the next step is to come up with a goal. So my suggestion for you is that you really spend a little bit of time thinking about exactly what your goal is in promoting. So first of all, what is the what? What is the thing you want people to do? Why do you want to connect with other people? Do you want them to hear your music? Are you ultimately hoping that they'll buy a piece of art from you? Do you want them to attend a protest or attend a talk that you're giving? Do you want them to sign a petition or a crowdfunding campaign? Or do you want them to hire you? Do you want them to conceive of you as an expert that can teach them something? And once you've come up with this what, the next question is who? What kind of people do I want to reach with my offer, this thing that I have to give? Where is my audience? Who is my audience? And where do they congregate? Online and offline. So this is my first thoughts. What am I trying to do? What do I want people to do? And who do I want to do it? So zeroing in a little bit more on the question of my target audience, which is the group of people I want to target, that I want to reach, I need to spend a little bit thinking about a couple of different things. So would really take some notes and while I'm coming up with my social media strategy, my self-promotion strategy, and think about these things together. So what are the demographics of my target audience? How old are they? Where do they live? What do they do for a living and for fun? Why is that important? Well, we talked about the what before, right? If I want people to come to my concert, that's an in-person event, finding out where people live. I'm not targeting people in Australia then if my concerts are in Berlin, right? Finding out what kind of person this is also gives you information about the next step, which is where are they online? There are certain things that people do, for example, in Europe that are less done in the United States, in Russia. There are social media networks that are not used anywhere else in the world. The same is true with China. But you also need to think about where they are online, because this is where our social media is going to come up with. When you can't think of these things, or when you're having a little bit of a block, like who is it that would like me? Where would they live? Who would they be like? Why don't you step back first and then think maybe a little bit about where you found the last favorite thing that you have. So for example, this year I read the 4 books by Elena Ferrante, the My Brilliant Friend trilogy, or I guess what's the word for 4 things? It's not a trilogy, but 4 books. So I really very invested in this author. I love her. And I was trying to figure out, where did I find out about Elena Ferrante? And I think that I actually found out about Elena Ferrante from a Instagram story from one of my friends. Maybe I even saw 2 different posts from 2 different people talking about how great this was. And am I annoyed now that I got that information? Did I feel harassed or targeted or, just irritated by having that information given to me? No, I found my favorite author that way. So you should think about as well in terms of your promotions is you might be someone's favorite something. How could you reach that person so they could find you? You're helping them in a way to find their favorite new thing. How would they find out about you? What kind of person? Where would they be looking? Would they be scrolling through Bandcamp? Would they be going through memes on Reddit? You need to figure out by looking at how you find stuff, how someone else might do the same thing. Would they be looking at recommendations on Goodreads? There's all sorts of different ways that people can find new things that they love. So you need to spend a little bit of time thinking about, if I want to reach people and allow them to find my work, where are the best places for me to spend my time, to spend my energy, and to get the word out. The next step you need to do is to think about, if someone has heard your name, let's say they're listening to a podcast and someone says, oh, you got to check out this performance artist, blankety blank. Now, that person goes, ooh, that sounds exactly like the kind of thing I'm into. Let me Google them. Are they going to be able to find you easily? If not, you need to make some adjustments. So first of all, spend a minute, Google yourself, and see what pops up when you do Google yourself. Now, if you have a very common name like me, you're going to be like 16 pages in, but I'm okay with that because the kind of work that I'm doing, I don't really feel that I need to get my name out there in the same kind of way, because sometimes I do sensitive topics. But if I'm an artist and I want people to find me, I would like that the top 5 or 6 sites are all things that I have created. Ideally, the very first thing you find when you type my name in is my website. Maybe the second thing is Instagram, the third thing is YouTube, the fourth thing is a review of something I've done. I want it all to be stuff that I'm in control of. What I wouldn't like to see on the first page of Google is Tina Lee, a 4th grader at John Adams Elementary, did a great job playing the Potato Man in the latest play. I don't want to see stuff from a really long time ago that's irrelevant to my current career and that has nothing to do with what I want people to find for me. I want people to find stuff that I want them to find, exactly that. And if you find that that's not the case when you Google yourself, then you need to go ahead and create some new pages. All of these social media sites have a lot of SEO built in, which is why often the first thing you find about someone is Facebook, their Facebook profile, even if they're not able to be viewed because of friends. So you just need to create some more pages if you want people to be able to find you that way. Now, let's say I've Googled, everything I find is stuff about me. Great, we're half on our way. The next thing I want to look at is my name. Is my name the same on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, as the same as on my website? Often it happens that people have a kind of cutesy name on Twitter or Instagram that does not match what their Spotify profile is. Now, here's why that can be a little bit of trouble. Let's say you hear about this person on a podcast and you look them up on Instagram and you find them and then you go, oh, cool. Now you look them up on Spotify, the name is spelled differently, the album's different, you can't find it. How long are you going to spend investigating this person so that you can hear the first song by them and find out if you like them? Most people have patience for about 1 to 2 minutes of clicking on things. And then if they can't figure it out and they can't find it, they're dropped. So you need to make sure that there's the easiest pathway from someone hearing your name to Googling you to hearing your music. And that means making sure that you have the same name and that it's really easy for people to type that into Spotify or to whatever else they're looking for. Similarly, you can check to make sure that you have a correct thing on Facebook. If you're, a food blog or something like that, your Facebook blog name should be the same as your Instagram name, should be the same as your website. So just make sure that you pick something that can work on all these different platforms to the extent that's possible. The next thing is your bio. You also find that a lot of people have really funny creative bios like cat lady and woman about town, or philosophical journeyer and wanderer of spirits, whatever. All those things are really nice, but the problem is that when you want people to know exactly what you do and that they can hire you, that is not given in that information. So you can put something else cutesy wherever you want in your bio, but it needs to also say musician and guitarist and singer, Berlin, Germany, and then contact, bookings, email address. That should be in all of your bios, because Again, we comes down to this thing where people are clicking through. If someone finds you on Instagram and goes, oh, this would be the perfect person to hire to DJ at this event I'm coordinating, and then they can't find you, guess what they do? Find somebody else. They're not going to investigate you in order to find you. They want to find the person that's easiest. So you should make sure that you make it really easy for people to contact you. If it is the case that you don't want to share your private email address with people, that's totally fine. Make up an email address that is your artist persona or your activist group or whatever it is, and just keep that separate. That way you have a separate bookings account. That's totally fine. It's just as long as people have an easy way to contact you and that they find it immediately when they find the rest of your stuff. I would also recommend that you have a website. What kind of website you have depends on what you're doing. If you are doing something where a website is basically the way to point at your other social media profiles or to point at the other stuff that you do, that's totally fine. Just have a really basic one. You can go to about.me. There's a lot for example, journalists, where it will just automatically add whatever the latest article that you wrote. You can just keep it really basic. If you are someone who wants to sell something on your website, such as sell your art, you need to level up. It needs to be more beautiful, and it needs to be secure, and needs to be able for people to use it very easily. And of course, if you want to show your performances or show your music, then you need video capability. So all of these things are things that you should take into consideration when building a website. But regardless of how little or how big your presence on your website is going to be, it helps to have a website just to keep everything in one place. Your website should feed back into all the other forms of contact that you have with the rest of the world. They should link to your social media profiles. They should link to your newsletter, whatever you have. So now there's the question of, should you be on social media? And if so, what should you be on? So there are some people who recommend that every person who needs to promote themselves should be at least on one of these big four, or on all of them, hopefully. I would say it depends on what you're doing. If there's just one platform that you have time for, and that's what this is all about ultimately, is how much time do you actually have to dedicate to your work on social media, which the amount of time that doesn't take away from your creative work, that doesn't feel like a total drain, but feels like an authentic extension of the self-expression that you're already engaged in. The one that I think is the best for people who have like zero time for anything else is Instagram, because Instagram is visual, it has pictures. At the same time, it also has stories, allows you to do videos, and a lot of people are on it. It's a huge creative community, and it's also where a lot of people discover new things. Now, if you are a writer, then maybe Instagram is not the best for you, because Instagram is not so heavy on the writing. Although there are people that find ways to make that work for them. Facebook. Should you be on Facebook? In Germany, Facebook is not as popular as it is in other countries. In some places, it is such a huge part of the internet that it would be a huge mistake not to be on it. I would say that you need to be on Facebook if you are someone who is scheduling events, because that is still the way that many, many people hear about events in their area. If you're having artistic events, parties, things like that, you need to have a Facebook presence. It can also be very helpful for people who would rely on a group. So if you are a life coach, or you are someone who is teaching watercolor classes or something like that, it would be very good for you to have a group that you can share things with, that you can ask questions. That is something that can be something that can grow your audience. Twitter is essential if you're involved in politics or current affairs. Otherwise, it can be useful for linking to other things. And if you're not sure whether you need to be on Twitter, try to find a couple of other people who you admire and follow, and see what their Twitter voice is like, and if you find that to be an essential thing for you too. It can be very useful for connecting to an international audience. I use it, I think for journalists, it would be essential, but if you're in music scene, it's probably best for linking to other places, although it has more capabilities nowadays. YouTube, of course, would be essential for anybody involved in any kind of performance, tutorials, music, and if you have videos where you're going to be doing behind the scenes gear. So pick the kind of suite that feels natural to you and that doesn't feel like too much work. And then there's also, of course, way more. You might want to be on Bandcamp, you might want to be on TikTok, You might want to be on Discord. There's all sorts of other things that are pertinent for various different groups, but that's again where we went back to our target group exercise, where you find out where the people that you want to connect with live on social media. Maybe they're not on any of these sites. I mean, if you're in the alt-right, then of course you need to get on Gab and whatever this Parler thing is. But I guess nobody who's tuning into Dice is going to be in that group. My point is that there's communities that live in certain places online, and it might not be immediately obvious to you if you're not in that community yet who they are and where they live. So in order to not go crazy and to make it make sense for you, it's also smart to spend a little bit of time organizing your social media presence. So for each of these things I was talking about before, they have ideal times per day. So when we talked about your target group, let's say your target group lives in Australia. We need to schedule some posts that will appear on Australian time zone, not just ones that come out in European time zone, right? Similarly, on certain platforms, it doesn't really matter when you post because the algorithm screws with it, like Facebook. But if you post too many times a day on one thing, people might see all of them at once and get turned off, versus there's other things where you can post as many times as you want. It doesn't matter, like Twitter. I would, if I were going to be on multiple platforms, invest some time in figuring out how I can schedule my posts, because otherwise you spend a lot of time in your week doing this. And ideally you want to do something where you can set it and forget it, at least for some basic promotional things. Like, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter, or I have an event coming up, check it out. Or read my latest post, whatever. If you can look at various different things like TweetDeck, Buffer, I think is still free. Hootsuite costs money. A lot of the sites that we're talking about have native scheduling, like Facebook will allow you, if you moderate a page, to schedule posts and to also boost them and to reach different audiences. And then there's IFTTT, if this then that, which is a kind of funny free machine that allows you to schedule, if I post to Twitter, it automatically posts to Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So there are strategies that go along with each of these sites and making sure that you post appropriate content to them. But I think the best way to get a hold of that is to, again, spend some time thinking about how you get into stuff and how you best hear about it, and finding out whether or not what kind of posts make the best sense to reach the people that you're trying to reach. Then there's the question about whether or not to have a mailing list. I think that anyone who produces consistent content and who wants to live from their work would be smart to have a mailing list. And all of your different social medias should allow people to join your mailing list as well as on your website. So your mailing list is a place where you should use your own voice. You should be authentic, and you should allow people to catch up with events, opportunities, concerts, sales, interviews, etc., press, things like that. What is also very helpful about having a mailing list is that a mailing list is an opportunity to see what people are interested in. So if you use MailChimp and Substack, you can track basically what people have opened. So if you had, for example, a link to your next concert, a link to some press reviews, and a link to behind the scenes footage, and you saw everyone was clicking on the behind the scenes footage, that would give you some insight into your audience and what they're really interested in. So this kind of feedback can help you to formulate content across your different platforms. That is actually true for a lot of the things that you said, that there's statistics available that can help you to frame your content. It is helpful for you to pay attention to what people like. I wouldn't get into the loop where we only make things what people like, but it can help you to see what kind of stuff you make is popular, especially if you're experimenting. So there's also the question of whether or not you should get a Patreon or an OnlyFans. If there are people that don't know what this is, both of them are sort of content producer websites where people have the option to pay to get extras. So on Patreon, it would be a place where you can post material and everyone can access it. And then you can put some material behind a paywall and people can sign up to give like $1 or $5 a month. And then they get access to extra things. Like, for example, if you have a podcast and then you have mini pods that people who are Patreon supporters get access to, or you make artistic boudoir photos of yourself and you have a couple of racier ones behind a paywall. So these are ways to get kind of a constant stream of support. Some people make a great deal of money from this. It's like kind of a hidden behemoth, especially OnlyFans is on Instagram. And Instagram's OnlyFans is often used by sex workers and for sexual content, but actually that's not exclusively what it's used for. It's also used for now food blogs, but it has a sort of intimacy aspect to it. So when you're considering whether or not to have a Patreon or an OnlyFans, it is a lot of work to have a sort of constant stream of updates to something where people count on paying because they get access to something extra, something behind the scenes. So I would be asking myself whether or not I want to have one of these things and asking a couple of the following questions. So do I get a lift from interacting with my fans and followers? Do I really enjoy kind of that, that intimate, Q&As? Do I make so much content that I have tons that I never actually share with anybody that I could actually, monetize? Is there a behind the scenes aspect to what I do that would be interesting for my followers? For instance, if I'm a painter and I record myself painting, this is something you could share to TikTok. It's also something you could share to OnlyFans or Patreon, right? It depends on whether or not this kind of process is interesting for you, whether you like to share these sort of things with others. What about a no? I wouldn't get a Patreon or an OnlyFans if I valued my privacy about my artistic process, if I found it burdensome to have to respond to every message that people send to me, and that I don't want to have that close of a relationship with the people who are my fans or my followers. If I like to create on my own timeline, for example, I have gaps of time where I don't work or I work on something else, and then I want to come back and do like a burst of creative energy. Patreon and OnlyFans are better for people that are consistently producing and that would have new content all the time. It's not worth it if you only produce occasionally. It's still worth it for you to only produce occasionally. It's not worth having a Patreon or OnlyFans if you only produce occasionally, because people will get turned off and they'll want their money back. And if I don't have anything behind the scenes content to offer, if I don't have anything exclusive. So both of these are things that have an element of intimacy to them. And I would ask myself, how intimate do I want to be with my fans? Is it something I'm comfortable with? Do I actually like that? I want that attention. It helps me feed my work. It feeds my creativity. Or is it something that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable or makes me feel overly influenced by others? Whatever, you just need to be honest with yourself. And it comes back to, again, being really self-aware with what makes you feel icky and what makes you feel inspired. And you shouldn't do things that make you feel icky, and it's different for everybody. Next, I want to briefly talk about the question of networks, because there is, this is kind of the in real life aspect. So you have this one aspect of self-promotions, which is all of the sort of social media stuff that you do. But then you also have who is your actual network, the network of people who give you assignments, the network of people who hire you, the network of people who are your collaborators, people in the media or the press that cover your stuff, people, for example, at the Dice Festival that you work with. We actually all have networks. And we're all born into networks. We're born into networks of families and communities, diasporas, whatever. And some of these networks are really active, but they don't necessarily push us further in the field that we want to be in. For example, I might have a much bigger network than you do, and yet I can't get into Harvard. You might have a really small network, but your dad went to Harvard. All of a sudden, you're in a position where you can get in to a school that I want to go to, even though my network is much bigger than yours is. You have some leverage that I don't have. So historically, a lot of the networks that exist perpetuate some form of inequality because they kind of provide a steady stream of income and opportunities to certain people. Probably all of us know of some people who seem to have it much easier in their field of choice because they have access to a network of people that highlight their work. Maybe they're born into a media family or an art family, and they're able to sort of access these things immediately. That's not fair. And we can counter this by trying to make our own networks built up in such a way as giving us access also to opportunities. And I want to say this is not conniving or trying to be friends with people who are rich and powerful or whatever, but it's more about making sure that you are are friends with people that can help give back to your work and that you can help give back to their work in ways that are also authentic and respectful, but that can help you move to the next level. And I think that there's a difference between doing this in a conniving way. One of the reasons why this is so important is because 70 to 80% of all job opportunities are actually not advertised. And you know this, right? Because you hear about people getting gigs or something like that, and you're like, wait, I didn't see that advertised anywhere. No, it's because somebody was in the right network. They had friends. Someone asked for a recommendation. They recommended them, and that was quick. So there is sort of historical elements to this where marginalized communities don't have the same access to those, to what they call in Germany, what is it, vitamin B, the vitamin Beziehung. So how can we sort of counteract the network access and network gap? So when we want to build a better network, and again, this is something that is not for everybody. Not everybody wants to go out there and shake it and hustle and meet other people. There are different ways of doing this that match your sort of personal personality. So a better network is diverse, genuine, and honest. So when I say diverse, I don't mean diversity in the sense of has a lot of different people from different ethnic backgrounds. You maybe already have a very diverse friend group, but that's not what I mean in this particular instance. What I'm talking about is people from different career groups, from different elements of society that might be useful or might be important to know to kind of get an insight into how those things work and how it can help your work. So if I am a book author, it might be good to have a friend in the publishing agency, not because that person's going to get me a publishing contract, but because they might be able to give me some feedback about how publishing works, right? It might be good to know someone from the police force, because maybe the work that I do, I need to, I write about, police. Well, I wouldn't recommend being friends with the police. I'm just pulling examples here, but you would need to think about who would be kinds of different groups and how can I actually meet people that are from these different groups? Where do I go to meet people from these different events? So that might also entail that you go to events that are tangentially related or also different than the ones that you do. Like you mostly go to club events, maybe it would be good to also go to some academic events or some conferences. You mostly spend your time at academic events and conferences, maybe it's good to go to some parties and meet some people that are from a different background or some gallery openings. So for everybody, it can be really helpful to meet people from different groups. We're in a moment right now where it's not that easy to organically meet people in real life from different groups. And yet it's still possible to go to all these online events and to kind of gain insight into what different people do. And that is also a chance for you to reach out to people and to do a digital handshake. For example, if you thought, wow, that Tina Lee, she's a journalist, I could really use some insight into that. Send me a message after this and we can meet for coffee or something like that. I'd be happy to be your network person in that realm. Genuine. So it's important that you follow, just as I've been saying the whole time, that you shouldn't do things that make you feel icky. It would make me feel icky to go to an event to kind of cuddle up to some rich older man in the music industry or something like that to try to get a record contract, right? Like I don't want to be friends with people that are not real, that I would not really want to be friends with in real life. So that's also not a useful network for you because it's very transactional. I would, when I'm trying to expand my network and to bridge the network gap, pay attention to people that I actually genuinely admire from different fields, people who I genuinely respect and genuinely want to connect with, not people who I think are important. So for that reason, I should probably try to meet them. There's a big difference because no matter what field, even in the field of, I don't know, investment banking, something that maybe you don't have a lot of respect for as a career choice, there are probably people within that field that you would admire that do something different there or that have made a unique place for themselves. So I would connect with people with whom I genuinely respect and genuinely admire and try to find if there's, if that's kind of something that can offer me insight into things that are helpful for me or just give me the chance to see something I wouldn't see if I'm not in that group. The next thing is people in your network, it would be good to be honest with. Probably some of you have had the opportunity or have been in the situation where people promise things that they actually can't deliver on, where they get to meet you and they say they're really excited about what you do and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and they actually don't do it. or I'm going to hook you up. Oh my God, I'm going to make you a star. Don't worry. If you get to know my dad, he knows everybody in that field. I'll introduce you. You don't want to be that person that's doing that. And you don't also want to be the person that falls for that. So you want to have connections with people that are genuine. Like I said, don't overpromise what you can deliver for other people, and don't manipulate or ask people for things that they can't reasonably be expected to give. Someone who is promising something that you wouldn't reasonably expect them to be able to give is probably not a real friend, but is a fake friend. And people don't always do that out of bad intentions. Sometimes it's part of your personality that you overpromise and exaggerate. God knows I tend to exaggerate a little bit, but a genuine network is one that is built on honest, genuine connections. How can you start to reach out to people to build a network connection? Well, one of the ways is to recommend people to others and to compliment. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, that people who recommend you to others, that you start following them. It happens to me all the time that if I recommend someone, say like, oh, for example, in journalism, you got to read this amazing piece by this author. She's doing the most amazing research into this topic that I love. Generally speaking, that person follows me back. Possibly they also then recommend something that I did. Because when you compliment someone, especially if you compliment them genuinely, people are quite charmed by that. But it's not just something that you should do to charm people. It's something that you should do because you generally want to help other people find more things that you like, or find more things that are amazing for them. So if you liberally give out the compliments, recommend other people, recommend other artists and other inspirations to you, that is a good way to connect with those people to some degree. It's also a good way to connect with people that like that other person. So I don't think there's any loss to it. It's not your job, but it can be a very helpful way to meet people. Another aspect is to consider your connections with other people as collaborations. So for instance, if you have the goal where you would like to get some press coverage for your exhibition, and you write to the journalist and just send them an invite like you sent to everybody else, maybe they'll come. If you write to them saying, I think that you're going to love this, this is right up your alley, and actually they don't cover this kind of thing at all, then it's not going to be something, again, that maybe gets their attention. But what if you've been following this person for a while, this journalist, and you also know what kind of work that they do, and you write them a personal email saying, I know that you're really interested in experimental art, and my exhibit's coming up. I'd be really happy to give an interview for you. I think it connects with some of the themes that you've talked about in previous articles. This person now views you as a collaborator because you're helping them to get a story. At the same time, it's a win-win because you get some press coverage and they get a story. So if you view intentionally the connection with that person as a collaboration, not a transactional thing, a win-win for both of you, that the chances that this person's going to want to help you or to write an article about you might go off or might be higher. At the same time, a collaboration that you have with someone might inspire a spinoff, right? You help somebody else to open for you at a concert, they might ask you to open for them. This is all pretty obvious stuff, and yet people tend to not do it for some reason. I'll give you an example from my own life. I applied for a job at the place that I'm working now. And when I applied for this job, I had been out of work for a while. I was really optimistic because I felt that the job profile suited me perfectly. I went in, I met the woman who was hiring, we clicked. I was like, oh, this is in the bag. I've got this. Finally, after searching for a really long time, like I feel really confident about this. And I went home, I waited, and I got an email in my inbox saying that I didn't get the job. And I was really disappointed because I thought, like, man, I really clicked with this person. I love what that organization is doing. I can't believe it didn't work. Fast forward a couple months later, I was teaching a journalism class, and I thought, you know what, maybe I'll send that woman an email and ask if she wants to come in and speak to my class, because that organization, I still really admire it. And I think it's cool to spread the word about some project that I admire. So I sent her an email, and I also mentioned that she could get paid for this opportunity. She came in and gave a speech to my class. It was very nice. And then afterwards she said, I want you to give me a call because I might have a job for you after all. And now I've been working there for 2.5 years. So why is that a story of a sort of collaboration and a win-win? Because I didn't get turned off by the fact that she didn't hire me. I still actually genuinely admired the organization. So that made it easier for me to recommend it to somebody else, to give her a chance to get something. It ended up being something helpful for me because I stayed in her circle. I kind of networked with her, and this was put me in the first position to get the job when it was available. Now, that might not be something that's perfectly applicable to your situation, but I would like you to also consider that if you really admire a certain project, a gallery, a event space, a activist group or whatever, that complimenting them, giving them opportunities, recommending them to others, and giving this sort of attention to them is also a really good way to set yourself up to collaborate with them in the future. Finally, I would like to talk briefly about digital security because I think it's something that we tend to not think about that much. I would like to recommend that if you're going to have an online presence, especially if you are someone who does anything which is slightly controversial, or whether there might be people who are trolls or haters, then and we all know that there's that women and members of the LGBTQ community get a lot more kind of online targeted hate than other groups of people do. So let's be safe and smart about how we establish our online presence, especially when we want to be able to openly promote ourselves and not feel scared that this is going to invite hatred. Sorry, I also meant to say POCs also get like much more targeted hate. In fact, I think they did a study last year showing that the group that is the most hated online is Black women, who receives the most trolling and harassment online. So if you are from a marginalized group and you want to be able to kind of openly self-promote yourself, then you also need to take digital security rather importantly. I would recommend that you go to the website of tacticaltech.org, which is a Berlin-based NGO, which has a number of different guides for giving you total digital security cover. But to give you just a couple of really quick things, the first thing is for every single one of my social media profiles, I would make sure I use passwords that have at least more than 10 characters and that are not like the name of your dog plus the name of your hometown. The best thing to do would be to use something which is a password protector, which can also generate passwords for you, like LastPass, which has a free version. And there are a lot of other password protectors out there. I think if you just look up password protectors, you should be able to find a bunch. I use LastPass. I think it's great. The second thing is on your social media sites, it would be wise to use two-factor authentication. It is possible for someone to guess your Twitter password if they have a little bit of information about you, or to guess your Instagram password. This is something you really don't want to risk. So if you use two-factor authentication, which is when you sign in, that you also get something, for example, to your phone that requires you to enter a code. You could also get an app like Authy that has an ongoing code that always is only on your phone that will allow you to sign in to, for example, Facebook, and it will ask you at the same time to present a code. If you have two-factor authentication, now all of a sudden anyone would have to guess your password plus also have your phone, and the likelihood of that happening, of course, dramatically reduces your chances of being hacked. Finally, I would suggest that if you have people who are hating on you, making rude comments, making you feel uncomfortable, that you just block them. A lot of times people feel that they shouldn't block people, especially shouldn't block their fans. No, block liberally, report them if they're doing something illegal. If they're engaging in targeted sexual or threatening or whatever harassment, then you should report them and you should block them. You don't win any awards for actually engaging with people who are trying to make you feel uncomfortable. So you should just feel really comfortable to just go ahead and block anyone who's being a douchebag. Yeah. So those are my main digital security things. As I mentioned, you should go to Tactical Tech, and they have an entire digital security work checklist for all the different things. And if you're someone who is particularly at risk because of the kind of work that you do for being targeted for harassment, it would benefit you to take some time to do a sort of workshop or to check out what the kinds of threats you might be facing are and how you can best counter them, because there are quite some good ways for you to make sure that you cannot be hacked and cannot be harassed online. Well, not harassed, but that people who harass you can't dox you and vice versa. So those were the main topics I wanted to cover today. Of course, for each of these things, there would be a great deal more that we could get into. Everything from how to make the best website to exactly how to schedule your posts. All of these things are really possible, but unfortunately, we would only have 10 minutes left. So now I'd be very happy to take any questions that you do have. I would urge you, if you have something that you wanted to talk more about, to email me at christinaely@gmail.com. You're also welcome to follow me on Twitter or DM me there, Tina Lee in Berlin. That's also my name on Instagram. And yeah, add me to your network and let's bridge the gap. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I would be happy to take any questions, if there are any. I see in the chat. Yes, so Tactical Tech, let me get the website up for you. They have a bunch of different tools. I believe it's tacticaltech.org. Let me see if that's right. Yeah. And they have events and stuff too in Berlin. Again, good group from another background to sort of network with. They do really cool stuff. Are there other questions? I also wanted to add into the chat, there is a good guide to self-promotion for creative independence from the website, thecreativeindependent.com. I like them a lot. For those of you who are more interested in hacking a network or figuring out how to build a stronger network, there are quite some good networking guides also on Amazon.com. Some of them are like $1.50. And one place that can be very useful to look for a sort of guide to being an influencer or to working in the music industry or whatever is to look on Amazon.com. A lot of people write very small, very cheap books about these topics where maybe it's not the best book in the world, but because it's on a specific subject, you might be able to get some insights that you weren't aware of. Are there other questions? Please don't be shy. All right. Oh, yeah, I posted to all panel. Oh, I think I posted to all panelists and attendees. Hold on, I'll post those links again. Moment, please. So there I have the link to Tactical Tech and also the link to the Creative Independent. Also, if any of you are journalists and would be interested in joining my organization, which is free, it's called hostwriter.org. It is sort of a journalism networking site for cross-border journalists. And if there are any other questions, I'd be really happy to answer them. And if not, I shall retire. Ah, I see that there's some questions on the Q&A. Sorry, just a moment, please. So any suggestions for job seekers? What's my opinion about getting feedback about rejections? So my opinion is always worth a shot. I don't see that people often do that, especially not in Germany. It depends. If you had, for example, like the conversation I was talking about before where I had this amazing meeting with this woman and I thought like, oh my God, we click so much. I think in that case, it's really worth it to try to reach out to them and ask them, but also in a really mean way, like not why didn't I get it, but like, oh, I've had such an interesting chat with you. I was wondering if you'd allow me to poke your brain a little bit. Would you think of any skills that I might need to get to help me to get this job the next time? Or do you have any advice for me for similar organizations? People really do like to give advice to other people, especially people who see someone who's in the same field as them, who's not making their way up. I, for example, love to give people advice. So I think it's worth a shot. If you didn't really connect with the person, though, you might not be surprised if they don't get back to you because people are busy. Specific books for promoting music and self-image marketing. I would have a look at what is already available online. For example, the creativeindependent.com has quite some good guides on self-image and marketing. There are some books on Amazon about these things. There are like very specific kind of guides. The problem is that I find that these are often geared towards like sort of older white men that are in bands. And they're also like a lot of times very American. So it's not necessarily European based. It's not necessarily for younger people. It's not necessarily for non-cis white men. So that can be not as helpful. I would, if it were me and I was starting out on this, I would look for new podcasts on this subject, because I think that that might be the best way for people to sort of share information. Books, I think, are maybe can be a little bit geared towards an older audience, although you never know. What I would also say in terms of job seekers is that for you, if you're a job seeker, if you're not someone who's trying to promote something that you've already done, but you're trying to find work at an organization, for you, all the other stuff becomes less important than the networking. The networking becomes the number one most important thing. And it can be difficult during a pandemic to network, but it's actually not impossible. I would be applying to attend conferences online and attending any kind of events where there's interaction. And I would be trying to meet people that do the kind of stuff that I want to do and be their biggest fans. And I mean, again, genuinely, if you are their fans, I would be talking about them, promoting their work, recommending them to other people, following all of their stuff. I think this is the best way to get people to also notice you, because people do really notice people that promote them. And it's also a good way for you to stay up to date on what kind of opportunities they do have. And when they see that you're like a legit super fan, then that also helps them to get in. But I would be making sure that my networking skills are top notch. That is, I think, the most important thing for finding a job in Berlin, because unfortunately it is a really tight job market, and it's really tricky to beat out people who have these personal connections. Also because of discrimination and the fact that they don't always follow their job laws that well. I see that someone else also added in a critical book about the music scene. That could be very helpful. I did want to also say, if you're launching something, it can be very helpful to sort of tack into the networks that you've already created. So someone who is thinking about launching a podcast or launching a event space or something like that, I would want to be building a network for that thing already a year in advance or so that I already have a group of people that are ready to see the kind of thing. So I do think that your promotions for yourself can sort of build on each other. If I'm in Berlin and I don't have a job and I'm looking for something, I would start to make my social media profiles really associated with the topics that I want to get a job in, so that someone that looks me up sees immediately, oh, this is really someone who's interested in art, music, and architecture or whatever, and all of their posts are about those things too. There's also quite some information for people who want to be more like influencers, who want to get paid for promoting makeup products or things like that. That's not necessarily what I think all the dice people are super into, but there are quite some good books online about this as well. And it is a way to make money and a way to connect with an audience of people that are interested in those kind of things. So that's also something where I think there's plenty of information online. There's a book called Influencer, which is all about this. And although I don't wish to be an influencer, I do think there's good tips there about creating a sort of online brand. And yeah, I think you can glean some good tips. And that's when I say about getting a sort of diverse network, I also think it can be useful to look at skills that other people use in other careers. So if you're into, if you want to promote music, it could be good to look at how artists promote themselves. If you want to promote your art, maybe you look at how comic book people promote themselves. You can get tips from other fields that can help you to figure out things that maybe you haven't thought of yet. If there aren't any other questions, then I really appreciate you guys tuning in today to pay attention. I would be pleased to answer questions on email if people have private ones they didn't want to ask, or you can also DM me on Twitter. And yeah, it's always fun to talk about these things. It's always fun to be part of DICE. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the rest of what the festival has lined up, and I appreciate very much tuning in.